What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you another week of everything that's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my very good boy, Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, how you doing, man?
You part of this family? Let's
You
go.
know, I gotta say that Succession trailer for season three, unbelievable, man. I'm so hyped.
No date yet, unfortunately, but exciting. There's a lot of shows that feel like they're close because they've been filming, right? In Succession season 3 is probably towards the top
Mhm.
alongside
Oh,
Barry and Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Atlanta. There's a lot of stuff finally returning after the extended break due to COVID, which is cool.
yeah.
We had the date for What We Do in the Shadows as well. That's coming back in September.
Yeah, I saw that, and for me, seeing both of these shows, Succession, I don't know why I can't say it today, and What We Do in the Shadows, and announcing that they're going to be coming this fall, and I think you should leave season two dropping today. I'm over the moon, man. This is a great time for television, and we're actually going to be talking about one of the featured actors from I think you should leave, Sam Richardson, who was in the Tomorrow War, and we have that as well as Zola, No Sudden Move, G Herbo, and we're going to do a little check in on the Chris Wars. So if you want to hear all of this, hit that subscribe button on youtube.com/slash nostalgiapod and go to soundcloud.com/slash nostalgiapod to follow the podcast any other way you'd like to. But Dave, we have to talk about this album, the G Herbo follow up to PTSD 25. I mean, well, where are you at with G Herbo going into this album? 25 or PTSD was a little underwhelming, I think you could say.
Yeah, I liked PTSD, but we actually didn't review it. Came out right before the pandemic began. But PTSD, I think, just kind of kept it going for G Herbo with a few notable highlights, namely the title track, which features Juice World, Chance the Rapper, Lil Uzi Vert, and appears to be the biggest song of G Herbo's career. I have to imagine a lot of that's chalked up to the Juice World fans because it is probably one of the best Juice World posthumous features, I'd have to say. But G Herbo's still doing his thing, and we checked in on him I think 2 years ago. His second tape with Southside got a lot of stuff out at this point. People know, and 25 25. This I believe this will make his third official album, fourth album. He's kind of marking getting this far as
Mhm.
someone from the yeah, I believe he's from the east side of Chicago. You know, having a tough life and finding himself quite successful now, and he seems to have dipped his toes further into committing to promoting his career. So, still like G Herb, always have, but I think we're still waiting for a signature hit from him
Mhm.
in the near term. Like we've had some really important moments in his career, but lately he just kind of reminds me of a solid rapper. You know, he's a solid Chicago artist, but he doesn't seem to inspire as much fervent fandom as, say, Polo G or Little Durk are doing as far as Chicago goes.
Yeah, I think solid is the way to describe the way I see him. He, especially listening to 25, I think there were some moments that I really liked, and then there were some I was like, this isn't necessarily bad, but it's just not something that's really hitting for me. Um, and I felt like in listening to 25, it kind of came in spurts. Like the first couple of tracks I thought were really strong, and then it kind of hits this lull in the middle. I think it's like right around like You Can't or No Jail Time, and it just kind of starts to feel a little samey and not as interesting. Maybe it's a little bit later than that, and then it kind of picks back up near the end. Like I thought, a couple of tracks like Loyalty stood out to me. Um, Turning 25 also was a track that kind of caught my ear. So I felt like listening to this, like this isn't necessarily not good, but I wouldn't say it was an album that I'm probably going to be talking about a lot beyond today. But did anything stand out for you in particular?
Yeah, I still had some moments, and I can't really put my finger on it, but I feel like G Herbo really is benefited by a good beat because for whatever reason, vocally, he maybe this is that Midwest drawl. I'm not sure what it is, but I feel like sometimes he needs the beat to help. But yeah, towards the end, I thought Statement stood out for some obvious reasons. Namely, it's the I Really Mean It beat from
Mhm.
Dipset. And I actually kind of like some of the lines on that because that's a really like introspective song. How the fuck we catch a case? We bought a school. I think a nice nod to both the good things happening in his life, buying a school, turning it into a community center in Chicago, the bad things happening in his life, some fraud charges levied against him quite recently. I like that song. I mean, using that beat, if you can successfully use a classic beat, it always seems
Of
to work out for
course.
you. Uh, obviously. Also, really liked um, Cold World and No Jail Time, particularly No Jail Time. I feel like that's that
Mhm.
storytelling, that's the Chicago drill darkness that people know by now. Um, on Two Chains, I thought this one was really funny to me because that hook, I think, is definitely like that samey kind of boring stuff. Like, bitch, I'm rich. What? Rich as shit. Like, okay, we get it. We get it. But it has probably my favorite line on the whole album, which I thought was hilarious. God gave a dude a second chance. Call it Taylor Bennett. That's amazing. That's a Chicago Chance the Rapper reference. I love it. Uh, And I actually thought the song with Gunn and Kid Roy was pretty good as well. Surprised how much I like those features. You can't. And then T.O.P. just because 21 Savage, his features are
Yeah.
still hitting. Like he's about as consistent as they come right now. It's awesome.
Yeah. Anytime Savage drops in, it's always welcome and always just, I perk up a little bit. Um, yeah, I I don't want to die and cry no more back to back. I really like that to start off. And then obviously, you get TOP just 2 tracks later. I think that's probably my favorite stretch, that first four. Um, I don't understand how you have a song called Two Chains and don't have Two Chains at least like do some ad libs for it. I mean, it's right there. I don't know. Um, I guess like I was just left wondering about G Herbo and Chicago rap in general. Chance isn't really uh doing much right now. Haven't really heard from him since his first album came
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
So who's like at the top
Specifically
of
musically, like he's around, but he's like not totally focused on being the rapper.
right, right. And so who is like at the top of the Chicago rap right now?
I mean,
Like
it's
who?
easily Polo G.
Right,
It's
yeah.
got to be Polo
Okay, I
G.
guess after Polo G, like
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be Dirk based on popularity, right? Voice of the Heroes with
mm,
Baby was really rapidly consumed. He's never been more popular, despite having a damn near 10-year career at this point. Not the biggest Dirk fan, but he can't argue with, like he's getting big features. He's making lots of moments now, featured on a Drake song and a Megan song in the last year, making his own album, collab album. Like he's definitely there. Um, so I definitely would think of Polo and Dirk first. And Herbo just kind of reminds me of, someone who's like workman, like Dreezy, right? Like they're not like
yeah.
stars per se, but they're in the major label system. They'll be paid attention to, but not just super popular at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because when we first started doing this podcast and talking about Chicago rap, we talked a lot about Vic Mensa,
Mm,
talking about Chance the Rapper, obviously, and
yeah.
it feels like there's like a real changing of the guard there right now. And I mean, it's interesting. It's just if Chance comes back and makes something, maybe he'll be able to regain that name.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of those other like more jazzy people, they're still around, but they're not like stars per se. Like Mick Jenkins, Spino's not Chicago, but he's close. No Name, who seems to be uh, perhaps even more well known for like her activism than her music at
Yeah,
this point, just because he's not super active as a rapper. Um, yeah, Vic's a good one, and we've talked a lot about Vic and how
yeah,
up and down he's been in his sound and his quality. So there's lots of Chicago artists that's not a problem. You just gotta like
yeah.
kind of pick what you like Saba, another one who we like,
Right.
but he's not like super popular, super well known at the end of the day.
No Name's a really good one. I had kind of forgotten about her, but I feel like every time she drops something, it's always quality. Wish she
Yeah,
did a
man.
little more.
Yeah, I mean, last thing she really did was the like brief like J Cole
Yeah,
response diss where she really kind of outclassed him. Yeah, I'm
crazy.
trying to think. Is there
Well,
anyone like we're forgetting? Like obviously putting aside the OGs like Kanye and Lupe and Common. Yeah, I don't think we're really missing. No,
I mean, Chief Keef's not in there at this point.
nah.
Is
Chief.
he
Oh,
from Chicago?
yeah, yeah. Chief Keef, Lil Reese, Fredo Santana's passed. Like a lot of the early drill guys, including Keef, they don't seem to be. They're not mainstream at all, no question. And Chief Keef still makes lots of music, but like, it's not listened to by many people beyond his
Mhm.
big fans. It's kind of weird.
Well,
Um,
Cupcake, right? I guess Cupcake is.
yeah, she's not even someone I would consider a Chicago rapper at first glance, but I guess that is where she's from.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's no one else that I'm thinking, and I'm also trying to look through here.
Yeah, I like Joey Perp, but he's like Saba, not super well known. Another person in
Right.
that chance orbit, which is quite vast. We've talked about Valet in the
Hmm.
past. He seems to have faded off a bit. I'm not a cowboy person, but he's still out there making more little melodic shit. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I think
I
it.
mean,
I mean, Polo
there's
G
talent. There's talent,
for
but
sure.
it's Polo's for sure at the top,
Yeah,
and great to see because I do really like him.
yeah, for sure. Also, I'm just looking through like a list here of rappers who are associated with Chicago. Shout out to Twista. Oh, I guess Earl Sweatshirt too, right? Is he technically a Chicago rapper?
Is he? I did not
I
know
don't
that's
know.
where it was from.
But
I
he's
definitely
listed here, but
I
who knows?
associate him technically with the West Coast because that's where Odd
Yeah,
Future was based out of with Tyler. Um, yeah, I mean his rap and ash, some rap songs type sound, I guess, is closer to the jazzy shit we've been talking about. I guess you could count it. Sure. I actually did not know Earl was from Chicago. That's funny.
yeah, interesting. I'm reading that Earl was born in Chicago, but his mom was a law professor at the University of California, LA. So
Okay. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, remember when it was free Earl, it was because he was in Samoa, not because he was in
right,
Chicago. So,
exactly. Yeah, I'm not putting him on the Chicago list. So, I mean, Polo G, Lil Durk, those seem like the top two right now. We'll see if Chance ever puts anything else out that maybe gets him back to that status. But
yeah, let's
real
just make
changing
some
of the
music,
guard.
Chance. Just make some music, man. Come on.
So, Dave,
God will give you a second chance too.
we're gonna hop over to some movies now, and I didn't make it to the theater this week, but you did. And what did you see?
I saw Zola, the A24 film, finally out after a rapturous reception at Sundance 2020 before the pandemic, and been excited to see it given the hype I was aware of at this point. Known, I think, just talked about it as like this is the Taylor Page breakout. You know Taylor Page from Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and Eddie Huang's Boogie, but now this is her in a full leading role. Exciting. And she's very good in it. Very good in it. So very happy to see. I think we all know at this point Taylor Page is quite a talented actress that needs a lot of work. She seems to be getting hired with lots of stuff. So people know, and that's good. And I think what's so funny about Zola is just the origins of this film. It's adapted from a famous Twitter thread from 2015, a 148, I believe, tweets long thread from a woman who goes by Zola. Is her nickname? Her last name is Moon. I forget. Yeah, Zola. She did this whole long Twitter thread and it went viral in 2015. It's a story about how she met a fellow stripper while she was working at like a Hooters type restaurant, and they kind of hit it off, and they decided to take like a weekend trip down further south into like the Tampa, Florida area to just go to some clubs and make some money, pole dancing and stuff, and then hijinks ensue, and it's like this crazy whirlwind type weekend thing. So that and there's now there was a Rolling Stone article about Zola about the story, and like I think that the film is also crediting that feature as well as the technical Twitter thread itself, right? And the movie is largely a adaptation of that story told in the tweets and further embellished in that story on Rolling Stone, and it's pretty crazy, pretty wild, but it's also a lot of fun. It has the like some obvious comparisons to like Hustlers, of course, namely that you're dealing with strippers, but I think like the energy of the story and like the vibes of the story are almost more similar to something like Spring Breakers from Harmony
Okay.
Korine. So kind of like a combination of those. And Riley Keough plays the stripper who hits it off with Zola, played by Taylor Page, and they make that trip down to Florida. Also involved, we have Coleman Domingo, who is the one driving them down. We learn later that he's actually Riley Keough's pimp because she's not just a stripper; she's also a prostitute. And there's like this whole big thing about whether they want to get Zola to prostitute with them. Also along for the ride, you have uh, Riley Keough's cuckold boyfriend, played by Nicholas Braun, aka cousin Greg from Succession.
Yeah, Greg the Egg.
Perfectly cast once again. He really knows how to kind of like be his like doofy self. He does a good job, and yeah, like the movie just has like a really fun energy to it. I
Mhm.
think there's also some like important like more like observational traits to it. No, namely, Riley Keough's Stephanie character has this really thick performative black scent, kind of like how like Bad Baby, the
Mm.
way she talks, right? Obviously, not sounding like a traditional white person, and you can tell how Zola reacts to this sort of thing. And I think if there's a flaw with the movie, it would be just it fizzles out a little bit with the end. But between like, I actually think it has really effective narration, really effective use of like Twitter sound effects when like important things happen. It's like, oh, here's another moment that will be tweeted.
Mhm.
There's a lot of cool things about it, and you know, some good montage work. Like, it's fun. So yeah, Spring Breakers vibes. I think that's what I would just try and pitch it as.
Looking through Jancica Bravo's uh, film credits here, she's credited with the Juneteenth episode of Atlanta. Really interesting.
Yeah, I believe she's one of the writers.
And I think it's really like interesting that seems to be her first feature length. And I mean, the way you're talking about it, seems like this might be someone to be keeping our eye on. It sounds like she has a nice way of integrating these like modern stories into really palatable and fun ways. And even just the background shot you're using here, it looks like it has that like A24 like almost like Technicolor type touch to it. I
Mhm.
definitely want to check it out whenever I can probably see it outside of theaters. But um, yeah, so it sounds like a really great movie. Is this one of your like biggest surprises of the year? Would you say?
I wouldn't say surprised just because I knew how like well liked it was, but
Mm.
it's crowd pleasing in a fun way. Like it does a really good job of maintaining tension and humor the whole time. I think notable in this is this movie was shot in I believe 2018. Like it's quite old at this point, and featured in the role as a Floridian they meet would be Jason Mitchell. And Jason Mitchell, of
Mm.
course, has, I think, largely fallen out of favor in Hollywood because he was fired from the Shy due to some misconduct and also had some legal issues separate from that. So it might be the last Jason Mitchell role we see for a long time, given what's
Yeah.
going on with him. But for what it's worth, I did think he was well cast. Um, yeah, I mean, check out uh, the Twitter thread. Check out some of
Mhm.
it. It's like archived everywhere. It's easy to see. It's really funny. It's really good. And like I said, Taylor Page is probably the big takeaway here. But also, yeah, Janiska Bravo. It's a good point. It's actually her second feature film.
Oh, is it?
Definitely,
Sorry, I missed that.
yeah, definitely talented.
Um, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I also gotta say, Riley Keough. I like a lot of things she's in. I feel like she's her stock is rising in my book. So, I
That
want to
Elvis
talk about.
Presley DNA, man.
I want to move on though to something we were able to watch in our homes, which is the Tomorrow War. And Dave, I gotta say, going into this movie, my expectations were extremely low. Not only have we had, I think, underwhelming Amazon Prime like big budget movies of late. I'm thinking about the Michael B. Jordan, Tom Clancy film.
Without remorse.
Yes, without remorse. No remorse in that movie at all. So, and Chris Pratt, I think, just in general, been middling on. I think for some, the Jurassic Parks
Mm.
theories and just
Yeah,
not
Jurassic
really
World.
yeah, not really loving Owen Grady as a character, not finding him super interesting. And he's playing Star Lord, but when it comes to like the Marvel universe, I think Star Lord as a character is just not one that people are you know clamoring for more of all the time. Especially after his performance in Endgame. I mean, they had Thanos and he just fucked it up. But I gotta
I think that
say,
was Infinity War, that one. But
Infinity War,
yes,
you're
you're right.
right. Sorry. The Tomorrow War really surprised me. It's a lot of fun, man. I really enjoyed it. How did you feel watching it?
Yeah, I had a generally good time. I think it's important to note that both Without Remorse and The Tomorrow War were not strictly Amazon productions, but rather Paramount productions that were later sold to Netflix due to the pandemic. Both those movies were supposed to come out last year. And again, perplexing that Paramount just kind of takes the bag versus putting these original films on Paramount Plus to boost those subscriber numbers. Kind of a having your cake and eat it too moment, but really an example of a streaming service not going all in when they need to be going all in and spending money on themselves. Nevertheless, Amazon has been, gobbling stuff up. Remember, they did the same thing with Coming to America. They were happy to
Hmm.
get movies they could position as their own. And Tomorrow War in particular definitely feels like a bit of a relic. I believe it's co-produced by Skydance, which will probably explain this, but it's a non-franchise big budget blockbuster. At the end of the day, these are just exceedingly rare at this point. And looking at that budget figure, I think it's like 200 million or so. Odds are this probably wouldn't have been a financial success at the theater, unfortunately, given in normal times, given the way non-IP films continue to perform, unfortunately. But still happy it exists at the end of the day. Like, it's a weird meta thing to say. Like, I almost don't care how good it was. I'm just happy it was out there, because it was
Hmm.
different. Uh, and yeah, like it's excessively long
Oh yeah.
and has like a lot of like dumb components to it, but there's some stuff I really enjoyed. And thinking about Chris Pratt's recent non-franchise movies of late, this is probably towards the top, given that he doesn't
Oh,
have that much to pick from, honestly.
absolutely. We'll start with the movie, then maybe we'll transition and talk about Chris Pratt a little bit more. Uh, I do think some of it was a little kind of dumb at points, but I gotta say, I think the premise of this was actually pretty interesting, and I
Yeah,
really feel like the first hour moved, like the way that they went through all the exposition, the setup of the people coming from the future to get basically their parents to come fight this war in the future. Uh, Pretty interesting. And to do it like during the soccer game, that was totally gripping to me. I liked
yeah,
the them getting ready to prepare like the boot camp where they're basically just like nothing we can teach you will actually help you in the future. Like good luck. It's like okay, like they're kind of setting up this is kind of a suicide mission in a sense. And then basically all the way up through his first time, fighting the white spikes.
yeah.
Um, I thought that all moved really well. So I was like, this first hour is great. I think the second hour is where things really start to slow down a lot. How did you feel about that first beginning?
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, again, it's a little long. Like, it takes almost 30 minutes to get to like the call to action, the
Hmm.
people teleporting in to explain the conflict of the Tomorrow War. Um, but I was kind of impressed with how they handled the time travel of it all between Pratt and Sam Richardson in like a two
Yeah.
minute span. They kind of explained how the time travel works, how they avoid any kind of time paradox. It was like so quick, so coherent, and then they just move on because it's
Hmm.
not something that you benefit from when you
Really
talk
look
it to
into it.
death.
Right.
So I quite enjoyed that. Um, and yeah, like you get through like he comes back, right? He gets zapped back, and there's like a whole hour left of the movie almost. It's like
Yeah.
it it was a little messy, but
Hmm.
I think there's some moments I liked, definitely.
Yeah. I think probably the my least favorite part and the part that they really couldn't have made this any more clear that this is going to be coming back at the end was when he's in the classroom, and he's like, what do you guys want to talk about? anything other than what Martin wants to talk about, those volcanoes. I was like, oh, so he's this kid's gonna solve it in the second half. It's just like it's so perfectly set up for
Yeah.
that. It's
You know,
so stupid.
along those lines, you have a 2 hour and 20-minute movie. I almost wish they like did the sleuthing to determine where the white spikes were hiding. I wish that took longer than like 90
Yeah,
seconds. Like they found it so fucking quick. I thought we could have given more time to that. On
they
one hand, I like how quick they explain the time travel in the beginning, but with this, it's like, oh, well, Volcano Kid will figure it out. We'll point on the map. We'll determine everything. Oh, and here comes J.K. Simmons. Bring him back in. He'll fly us there covertly. It's like it was just so clean, so quick. You know?
yeah, that fine. When they get to it's basically Siberia. I don't know exactly what the
Yeah.
country was.
The biggest glacier in Russia, whatever it's called.
Yeah, and J.K. Simmons is like it's like looking for an ice cube out here, and then they fucking find it in like 5 minutes later. I'm like, okay, I guess it wasn't like looking for an ice cube. It was like looking for
Yeah, how'd they
what?
find it? By the way, didn't they just kind of like keep driving the snowmobiles and then they just found a pit or something? Like
Yeah,
there was no
something like
inciting
that.
incident to find them, right? They just
Yeah,
kind of
that
found them.
that was yada yada a little bit. But you know, I think the second half of the movie probably is. I didn't really love the stuff between Chris Pratt and Muri. So I guess
Right.
James and Muri or Dan and Muri. Seeing his adult daughter, I think like that's very much like shoehorned in at times. I feel like, and not that it didn't necessarily like hit all the emotional notes because I think there are certain moments between them, like when she dies and he like jumps after her right before he gets swished back, or when they're working on the vaccine or the poison together. And she's kind of like recounting like I just wanted to like have you there and like this is what I wanted, blah blah. Like that stuff kind of works for me. But a lot of the like, will she let him in? Will she not? It's like you have to understand that this isn't the dad that you had growing up. This is the dad before that point. So like, why are
Yeah.
you so mad at him? Like I was just I don't know. Like, there's a lot of feelings involved.
Right, and like that part of it's part of the initial premise that's so interesting, right? It's like they
Yeah.
have to go back in time to basically draft more soldiers, but they only can use soldiers of a certain age for the sake of the time paradox. Therefore, everyone who's coming back in time that we're meeting for the first time, they haven't been born yet. Like it's all really cool,
Yeah.
and yet meeting his adult daughter from the future isn't cool. Like
Mhm.
it wasn't fun.
No, and it should have been like, and if it felt like Chris Pratt wanted it to be fun, and Ivan Strahovski was like, no, not gonna let this be fun.
Right.
I thought she was still really good. I'm gonna say, like, I found her every time she was really like doing stuff on screen, whether it was action stuff or some of the science stuff or like explaining the world at that point. I thought she was really captivating, but just their dynamic was a little off to me. Also, Betty Gilpin should have gotten more play in this, dude. She's great. I always want to see Betty Gilpin getting bigger
Yeah.
roles. Her,
Pretty thankless wife slash
yeah,
mom in this one.
yep.
What was your favorite set piece? I think there's a few like notable ones.
Mm,
There's the first time they jump into the future and they're like looking for the scientists and they escape and stuff. I think that one's really cool because a lot of tension, a lot of like uh fear of the unknown still before the white spikes just kind of become a mindless, endless horde, you know?
Yeah.
There's that. There's when they capture the queen alien
Hmm.
like underground, those like little caverns. And then I guess there's the fight on the oil rig or like the base, the sea
Mm.
base right at the end with all the fire. And then there's the final fight between JK, uh, Chris Pratt, and the Queen. So those four big ones I feel like stand out.
Yeah. I think the first one is my favorite. I just wish they
Same.
didn't do show it right before the beginning. They should have just started with the holiday party. I felt like go right into
Yeah.
Chris Pratt and being depressed and then the soccer game. You didn't need to show me him falling into the pool. That part was what like sucked me in immediately, but like it would have sucked me in later too. It was still great.
Right. Did not need that immediate rest, no question.
No. But you agree that one was the best one for you?
Yeah, definitely. Because honestly, I wasn't a big fan of the white spikes at the end of the day. When you have
Yeah.
mindless, like not sentient antagonists,
Mhm.
you need a little more brains, right? Like Alien, obviously very
Yeah.
intelligent. Even the later Alien sequels, there's still like an intelligence to how they operate, I guess, apart from like the AVP movies. Um, I just I wanted like they're just kind of mindless and endless, and they just keep coming and coming, and it was just kind of almost defeatist, nihilistic, and see them as antagonists, right? The fight with the Queen though was a lot of fun. I really liked how that went, but yeah, I mean they kind of faded away to me as they just became both cannon fodder, but also just never ending. You know?
Yeah, I thought maybe the last fight might have been my second favorite, only for the ridiculousness of J.K. and Chris Pratt. I mean, they literally do a setup where J.K. is shooting at the white spikes, and as he runs forward, Chris Pratt perfectly times it so that this white spike doesn't hear him, but somehow he hits this white spike with the snowmobile right on like the side of the head, and then he literally kills it by punching it out. He like Mike Tyson's the
Right.
fucking queen
Well, he had
off
he
the
had some
edge.
PEDs with the
That's
the supers, the serum, the poison, right? But
I guess.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
he was uppercutting the queen. It was crazy.
yeah. I think this movie also kind of highlights perhaps one of like the weaker qualities of Pratt as the leading man. He kind of always gets like strung into these like everyman roles
Mhm,
while also being like exceptional. Like he's an everyman, but he's also like an intelligent person with dinosaurs in Jurassic World, right? He's not just
mhm,
some dumbass in Jurassic World movies. So in Tomorrow War, he's actually supposed to be this really intelligent veteran like scientist guy, right?
mhm.
But it's never really like expounded upon in the film. We're just kind of told it. And I don't know if Pratt has that kind of range to like make it believable. He only kind of has like those certain facial expressions we associate with him,
Mhm.
but you're not really here for that anyway with this kind of movie. So I guess it's not the biggest deal.
Yeah, it's really funny that he's just like a green beret and like a science wizard somehow. I guess maybe he's
Mm.
not. He's a biology teacher. I don't know if they ever say he's like a real
You're a great
scientist.
candidate. The only thing you're missing is blue collar experience. It's like,
No,
okay.
I think they said private sector
Private
experience. They
sector.
wanted,
That's what
yeah,
it was.
they
Yeah.
wanted him to be doing those like, for hire operations. Like, okay, this guy's a fucking green beret. Like, What is he gonna do that is really not gonna be that great? Also, I just love that he also gets put in the same group as Sam Richardson, who's a you know PhD in I think like earth science or something like that.
Mhm.
Just you know by chance, but I found this movie really enjoyable. I'd probably give it like a solid B because maybe my expectations going in kind of color that grade, but I really thought this was going to be absolute trash, and it turned out
Mhm.
pretty good. And this was the most enjoyable I've found Chris Pratt in a long, long time too. So
Right. Just want to also shout out one of the supporting characters, Dorian. He was like the guy with the claw on him. He kept going back and
mhm.
back multiple tours. The Tomorrow War,
Yep.
played by Edwin Hodge, who is the brother of Aldous Hodge. I did not know Aldous Hodge had a brother, let
Oh,
alone a brother who
yeah.
acts.
He was pretty good too.
Yeah.
So shout out to him, Dave. We've been talking about Chris Pratt as we've been going through. And I think it's time we just kind of check in with the Chris Wars, man, because it's been a little while, and you know, Chris Evans, I think we've probably been talking about the most, especially as we've been checking in with things like Knives Out and Knives Out Two. I think we kind of mentioned him there. But I mean, I feel like we haven't really talked about the Chris's that much in general. So
Chris Pine for Wonder Woman 1984 as
yeah, that's
well.
right. I forgot about that. Oh
But
wow, I
Pratt,
blocked that movie out of my memory.
right.
God.
But Pratt, apart from Tomorrow War, which just came out, it really hadn't been anything outside of Marvel in a while. And same for Hemsworth. I feel like the last time I talked about Hemsworth outside of Marvel was Men in Black International,
Mhm.
which wasn't super positive. So yeah, I think it's an interesting point to check in with all of them because I think there's been a lot of progression and movement in the standings of the Chris Wars. Right, it's a fun thing to talk about. Obviously, it's quite arbitrary. We're just talking about them because they're all named Chris. They're all handsome white men. But I think 10, 12 years ago, they were coming up as leading men and largely auditioning for the same parts. So it does make sense a little bit to pit them against each other. Um, I know some people on the internet like to throw Chris Messina in this war as well. I think
uh,
he's definitely, um,
a tier below.
yeah, he's definitely like a different tour of duty. Like I like Chris Messina plenty, but these four, I think, are all we got to talk about. They're at the pinnacle, and it's really funny to reflect back on where we've been with the Chris Wars because I feel like perhaps all four of them have been at the top at one point or another. So it's always cool to check in.
When would you have thought Pine was? Like I'm trying to think when.
Uh, I don't want to spoil the conversation, but I'm very high
Oh,
in Chris Pine.
right now. Wow.
Yeah,
Well, we'll circle back around. I guess who do you feel like is at the bottom right now? Because I think I have someone I pretty clearly put at the bottom.
Chris Pratt.
Yeah, he's number four for sure for me.
And that was not always the case. Remember when Chris Pratt moves beyond Parks and Rec guy, but also moves beyond supporting character in movies like Moneyball and Zero Dark 30.
Mhm.
The double whammy of Guardians of the Galaxy and Jurassic World really catapulted Chris Pratt. And there was talk, really just nothing substantiated, but there was talk, oh, he could be the new Indiana Jones. Maybe he'll be Nathan Drake from Uncharted. Like there's everyone was putting Chris Pratt in everything. And several years removed from that time, 6 years ago, it probably hasn't gone as well as I think people wanted. Not to mention there's been some controversy outside of his movie work. So yeah, he's kind of easily on my bottom, my fourth,
Chris Pratt. Just want to read off his 2014 into 2015. The Lego Movie,
right?
Guardians of the Galaxy, and Jurassic World. All those are all three back to back. And then he does the Magnificent Seven, which I think people like, but
Yeah, so it's more
you
of a
know,
supporting turn.
yeah. And then Passengers, and then it's all Marvel, pretty much Marvel and
Yeah,
Jurassic World from there, and Lego World, obviously, or Lego movies. But he doesn't do anything else original until I guess he's voicing Onward and then the Tomorrow War.
right.
So,
I wanted to like Passengers so much, but that's a movie that has a really fatal flaw at the end of the day. Um, yeah, and I would chalk that up as a miss. And it's funny, you think about all these guys, everyone kind of has a miss, right? Like Hemsworth, he has In the Heart of the Sea, he has Men in Black International, he has a miss. Pine, what's Pine's miss? Hemsworth actually kind of has a lot
mm,
of them too. Black Hat, the Michael Mann movie.
oh yeah,
Um, Bad Times at the El Royale, I liked, but that movie bombed. Um, yeah, he's interesting. But yeah, I think Pratt pretty clearly is at the bottom. Like especially like as like the sheen of his voice work in the Lego movie has gone off. Like we'll get Jurassic World Dominion, whatever the third one's called, in 2022.
hmm
He'll be in Thor, Love and Thunder again. Not to mention Guardians 3. But after that, there's like nothing on his calendar, which
hmm
would be surprising. You'd have to think, right?
I mean, I feel like Pratt should try to go back to TV for a little bit. Even if it's like a short series, something on HBO, maybe, but get a little something something going here. Because if you just keep doing these franchise movies. I feel like that's how you stay at the bottom of the Chris Wars, which I'm sure he's very worried about. But I think the hard part too is Thor: Love and Thunder is basically becoming like Thor plus Guardians of the Galaxy from
Right.
everything that we understand. So it's a Hemsworth led film that's gonna have Pratt pretty much in second fiddle most likely. It's a tough look for Chris Pratt. All right, so you have Pratt number four. Who's number three for you, Dave? It
This
gets
one's
hard
tough.
here.
This is hard, and I feel like Pratt's probably like the most popular pick for four. I think in general he's like I said, like he's probably just the least well liked as a celebrity at this current time anyway. So he's pretty easy to put down there. It's hard though for three because I'm trying to be objective, and I think you got to say Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, I had him there actually pretty easily. And the reason I think I have him down there is while Thor is great, I think as we talk about Infinity War and Endgame, he's pretty clearly, third behind Evans and Downey Jr. in that pecking order, even though they all got that nice battle against Thanos, who is inevitable at the end of Endgame. But yeah, then you look here, Men in Black flop, uh, really bad. I mean, made a decent amount of money, but not well regarded.
Yeah.
Extraction, I think we both felt like the action was pretty cool, but is that really like a movie we want to go back to? We want to see more of? I
You
don't
could
know.
kind of cut and paste Hemsworth
Any
out of that for someone else competent in action, as far as like a John Wick inspired approach to like visceral action
Mhm.
filmmaking. Hemsworth himself doesn't make the biggest impression, although give him credit for the stunts. And like you said, Men in Black International, as well as Ghostbusters 2016. I actually
Awesome.
think he's
Yeah.
not bad in either of those movies. He has shown, I think, a pretty solid ability at comedy, which has obviously been highlighted in the later Thor iterations. But those movies were not well received nor successful. So I think I mentioned the other ones too, right? Black Hat, 12 Strong, uh, In the Heart of the Sea. These are all kind of flops. And on one hand, credit for trying to get out all these other kinds of movies. A lot of these are original
Mhm.
films, but his like star power outside of Marvel has plainly not come to fruition.
Yeah. And just looking here, I mean, what was the last movie he was in that we would say was really good? I mean, Bad Times at the El Royale had a lot of potential, but
Yeah,
I don't
it's
think.
okay. It's solid.
But I mean, what's the last like really good movie he was in?
I would have to go way back again, away from Thor Ragnarok. Everyone loves. Apart from that, I would have to say Rush back in 2013, where he
That's
plays
crazy.
James Hunt, the Formula One driver. That's a Ron Howard movie that
Yeah.
I think does rip in its own regard. But oh, and I guess critically you would say Cabin in the Woods as one of those like
Mm,
surprise horror gems. But that's 9 years old already. Crazy
yeah.
enough.
Um. Yeah. That's tough. And one of the factors we also have in here is the celebrity of it all. And I think Chris Pratt as a celebrity in the last year has had some people who are not so thrilled with some of his political stances, and he drew some ire for that. Hemsworth, I just haven't really even seen much at all as a
No.
celebrity. Beyond obviously his like Instagram pictures and not skipping or always skipping leg day, I should say. Um, Otherwise, I don't. I feel like he's not really out there as a celebrity at the moment. Also, tough to say after COVID. No one was really out there all that much.
Right, right.
So then we're down to the top two, and it sounds like you have Pine at number one.
I do.
So maybe this is the time to make the case for Pine. Then we'll circle back to Evans.
Right. And I think Pine there's an argument against Pine, and that's because his franchise obligations have kind of ended. But then again, you could say the same for Evans, right? In Chris
Mhm.
Evans' case, he's bowed out of the Captain America role as far as we know. Um, some reporting that might not be permanent of late, but as of now, Chris Evans is not Captain America anymore. Chris Pine is no longer James T. Kirk from Star Trek anymore, but that's not really his doing so much as it's uh, what Paramount's inability slash unwillingness to continue making that franchise. And the last we knew of that Star Trek 4, when it was still being talked about, one point S.J. Clarkson directing it, one point Noah Hawley directing it, they were thinking of bringing back Chris Hemsworth's character as George Kirk, his father, which which would have been kind of a weird time like loop thing because of course Hemsworth is in the very first of these Star Trek movies and dies in the first scene. So that would have been something, right? But like due to like financial reasons, contract squabbles, Star Trek continuation of that franchise that began with J.J. Abrams is done, and now Pine doesn't have a franchise, right? Because we'd have to imagine his Wonder Woman obligations cannot
Also, are
continue into Wonder Woman 3. It was a bit of a walk to even have him in Wonder Woman 1984. Still liked him in Wonder Woman 1984. Pine himself was good, even if like the Steve Trevor of it all was kind of strange
problematic.
and also morally questionable.
Oh man, that's a really good point. And I'm looking here. and I'm thinking, what are like the standouts here? And the first one that really stands out to me, obviously, is Hell or High Water from 2016. That's the gem, right?
Yes.
But then
That
you
is a
look,
Best Picture nominated movie. None of these other guys have been in one of those, let alone the lead of one.
but then even looking forward from that, I mean, we have Hell or High Water, then we have Outlaw King, which we both really liked.
I love
And it,
Outlaw King.
I think he's great in that too. So I'm
As
gonna give
Robert the
him.
Bruce, of course, a Braveheart historical prequel, basically,
And then the next movie
or
after
sequel.
that
Sorry.
is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where he played the Peter Parker who dies. I
Right.
mean, uh, these are three great movies in like a 4-year stretch. And
Hmm.
then you're including Wonder Woman in that. Obviously, he's great in that. Uh, so then I guess I'm thinking because I'm thinking with Evans, he's been in a couple of really good movies too recently. At least
Well,
Knives Out.
it's really only been Knives Out because he also did Defending Jacob, that Apple
Yeah,
TV Plus series.
that's right.
Um, and Knives Out, I think, is an important thing for Evans because it's him doing a different speed than Steve Rogers. And he had been so busy as Steve Rogers that he was not doing much acting since the Marvel machine really picked back up. You look at that list of credits, there's really nothing there. But until you go back to like Snowpiercer, which of course everyone loves as a Bong Joon Ho movie, but it's been a while
Yeah,
for Evans. But he seems to be making up for lost time with a great turn in Knives Out, and then we have a supporting role, ensemble role in the Adam McKay movie Don't Look Up. He'll be the voice of Buzz Lightyear in the Pixar film Lightyear, the prequel, coming out next year.
hmm,
And he's also one of the leads alongside Ryan Gosling in The Gray Man, which is the Russo brothers' upcoming action thriller film, their first movie since Endgame. So
pretty
Evans is
good.
getting busy, thankfully, but we've only just started to really see it manifest.
Yeah, and so as I'm looking here, I'm thinking about Knives Out, and that really calls back to an early part of his career. With I guess not that early because he's been working for a long time, but mid part of his career, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, right?
That's
And I
right.
feel like that got
Mhm.
a lot of attention this past year because of the 10-year anniversary and just getting a lot of love. And I think for me, just also as a celebrity, Chris Evans just stands out as someone that I see out there more. I think I he has more star power than Pine. So for me, I think
He
he's still
does.
number one. But you made a really good argument for Pine. I think this is close at the top.
I'd also like to note that Pine has another supporting role coming up in Don't Worry, Darling. That's the upcoming Olivia Wilde film starring Harry Styles and Florence Pugh. And he's also apparently, I didn't really know this, he's the lead of the upcoming Dungeons and Dragons film from Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daley, which has been a long gestating project, but that is a talented directing duo to have in it. So that's cool.
Yeah. I
And there's
mean,
some other smaller movies that Pine as well as Hemsworth are involved in that are coming up. But yeah, I think what you said is right because Evans is, I think, clearly at the top as a celebrity.
yeah.
And I think it's really more about I think your taste. And if we're looking forward, it's easier to argue for Pine.
I gotta say, I think the thing that stands out as we're talking about this is Pine and Evans have that ability to play that dick, play that villain. You know, you think about Pine in something like Horrible Bosses, and he's just
Mhm.
so like despicable, but also
This
kind of fun
means
in that.
war, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, and Pratt and Hemsworth are a little more goofy. You know, they kind of tend to lean more towards the comedy, and I think that doesn't work as well when you're looking for the quality of movies that they're putting out. So, um, yeah, this is a fun conversation though. It's a good thing to check in with. Maybe after we get some of these movies coming up in the next year, so we'll double back and see where we're at. But Evans and Pine at the top, Hemsworth and Pratt stock down. But you know whose stock is definitely up, Dave? Steven Soderbergh. Because No Sudden Move dropped on HBO this past weekend. This is my movie of the year so far. This movie fucking rocked. I loved it. This feels like Soderbergh kind of getting the reins back. You know, we've been talking about him a lot. I feel like you know, out of everybody that we usually, in the past year, we haven't been talking about a lot of people. We've been talking about Steven Soderbergh consistently because this guy just keeps making films. I mean, what was the one earlier in this year with the old women? I'm
Let
forgetting the
Them All
name already.
Talk at the end
Yes.
of 2020. That would be Soderbergh's first movie for HBO Max. He signed a 3-year deal at the beginning of 2020 to make films for them. And given how quickly he makes films, probably good bang for your buck from Warner Brothers and friends, because his third film on that deal, Kimmy, starring Zoe Kravitz, is already in production. So he'll probably get a fourth movie out before the deal expires, and I'm sure he'll move on after that because that's who Steven Soderbergh is. He likes to dabble in mediums and distribution and everything in between,
Hmm.
and it's just fun to be a fan and watch his movies. This is his, like, he's 33rd, I believe, feature film, but also notably his sixth heist movie after the Ocean's trilogy, Out of Sight, and Logan Lucky. So this is almost like going back to the hits in a certain sense for Steven Soderbergh.
Yeah. I mean, since we've been doing the pod, it's been Logan Lucky, Unsane, which I don't think either of us have
We
seen.
didn't, right?
High Flying Bird, The Laundromat, Let Them All Talk, which we have reviews on. Check those out. As you mentioned, No Sun Move and Kimmy, we will be talking about when it comes out. But he also has made a lot of television. The Nick comes to mind,
Mosaic.
And isn't there a second season of the Nick that's on the way eventually? I think there's
There's
been
two
talk
seasons
about it.
out already. The third season
Okay, third
is
season.
coming. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was a
Mosaic.
Cinemax show that you can now watch on HBO Max.
Then Mosaic, I think, was a show we talked about, and I think we got like an episode in. We're like, this is a little too
Yeah,
experimental for us
right.
necessarily,
But
but
when you take that
interesting
many swings, it's okay to miss once in a while.
for sure. And um, I would say No Sudden Move is absolutely a hit for Soderbergh because we were excited about it. We talked about it on our most anticipated movies of the year, and I think not only are the performances great in this, but uh, the way Soderbergh weaves this story together and the way it all kind of comes to a head at the end, found it super satisfying. What was your experience overall just watching No Sudden Move?
Yeah, so obviously going in knowing it's Soderbergh, but also knowing it has a crazy stacked cast. That's all I needed to go in. I actually never watched the trailer. You know, a lot of people made a lot of noise at the trailer, but you know what? I'm like, I'm good. It's coming early July.
Mhm.
I can wait. Let me go in
Yep.
fresh. And on one hand, I would love to see this in the theater, given how
Yeah.
intentional a lot of the filmmaking is. We're set in 1950s Detroit. There's a, kind of like amorphic fishbowl lens at times, the angles we're seeing, not to mention the production design. So looks awesome. And this was
Hmm.
shot during the pandemic. But to me, I didn't really notice. I thought production design wise, it was still quite top notch.
Yep.
Uh, and yeah, as a heist movie, I think the key uh, sign that it's successful is that it's so riveting and so
Hmm.
fun to watch the whole time that you don't even need to know what the fuck's going on.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't hold your hand in the beginning. You don't know who is who they're talking about. There are character names referenced liberally throughout the act one, and you don't know who the fuck these people are. But you're
Yep.
just riding, and it's going. And it has a lot of, like, seeing everything get pieced together by the end, like a
Hmm.
lot of heist movies, a lot of thriller movies go about. Really satisfying. And when the cast is, I think, 100% operating at this high a level,
Yeah.
you can forgive like narrative confusion.
Yeah. And to be honest, I didn't even find it super confusing. Like I think you can still follow along, kind of understand. Like,
Yeah, you
okay,
can.
there's things that are going to be filled in, but I kind of know where this is moving or know why they're doing these certain things in certain moments. Um, I think the best sign for me was I got about like I don't know, three-fourths of the way through the movie, and I realized that the only time I had really checked my phone was to look up something that had been talked about in the movie. And that was to, I think, just look up the redlining practices and the neighborhood that was referenced that
Right.
was being kind of taken down and built up for condominiums and apartments instead of the vibrant neighborhood it was, in the black neighborhood there, I should say. Um, I think this movie probably is like up there with some of my favorite Soderbergh because it has all of his trappings, but it kind of operates on a level that um, I just found it to be really, really well pieced together, and every character that comes in kind of gets their moment, and then it kind of moves on to the next character, whatever they're doing. So I think about like Kieran Culkin, for example. He's in the movie for like 20 minutes. He fucking steals those 20 minutes he's in. Like everything he's doing, I'm like, oh, this is exactly why he's great in Succession. He just has this energy that he's bringing, and then he's out, and then the movie kind of totally flips, and you're on to like the next thing, like David Harbour having to go and get the thing out of the safe. You see, Don Cheadle reacting to Kieran Culkin being killed, and or him killing Kieran Culkin, and then like reacting to it all, and like that coolness of it, of that character. It's just like everybody kind of gets that night, that moment, and the seams don't show it all. It's really, really well done. I don't know if I necessarily found all the filmatic flourishes, like when he would go to like the fishbowl lens. I'm not sure if there was more meaning to that, or it's just him kind of trying out something stylistically and seeing how it worked or how it looked. Um, but I found it all to be really enjoyable. Um, I don't know. I really can't say enough good things about this movie. Um, I don't want to spoil too much because I don't know how many people have seen it. I think it's probably
Mhm.
hard to know, but it's available. So if
Yeah,
you gotten this far, I'd just say tune off and maybe we can go into some of the finer details of it.
yeah.
Um, I think especially I wanted to talk about the surprise of Matt Damon showing up at the end.
So
How
was
did
it a
you?
surprise for you?
It was a surprise for me. Where
See,
did you know it was coming?
I knew he was in a cameo role.
Oh,
Yeah, so I knew it was coming, and I kind of had a feeling when like the two people, the two like gangster, not gangsters, but like big names you keep hearing about are
Aldrich.
um, Ray Liotta's character Frank Capelli and Bill Duke's Aldrich Watkins, like the two
Hmm.
gangsters, the white guy and the black guy. And then you also hear about like the buyer, which is Mr. Big, Mike Lowen, and that's that. And I kind of got an inkling that that might be where Matt Damon's going to pop up because
Yep.
I don't kind of was already familiar with the cast, so I'm like, we've gotten just about everybody else. Wonder where Matt Damon fits in, you know?
Hmm.
And great scene. You know, that's Damon
Absolutely.
at his most Damon. You know,
Yep.
incredibly charismatic, incredibly talky. You
Hmm.
know, and of course he's a Soderbergh vet from the Ocean's movies, just like Don Cheadle, and Del Toro's a Soderbergh vet as well. So I love the scene with Damon. It was awesome.
Yeah, not only that scene, but the scene when John Hamm brings him the money at the end, hilarious. I wish I could cut you in, but here, take any liquor you want over
It's
here.
a $80 retail. No,
uh,
I love the best when Ham is like, "Oh, it's actually,
406,000.
must have miscounted." But,
Hilarious.
you know, kinda
Uh,
like it's out it's, like, open and out there, but not like the main crux of the storytelling, but the redlining practice happening in
mhm,
1950s Detroit, a terrible part of the history of many cities in the US, that's very present in the film, as well as something that isn't really fully explained till the end. You realize that these documents and stuff are related to car companies and stuff. We are in Detroit in the 50s, Motor City after all. But then you realize that it's related to a conspiracy by the American car manufacturers to
mhm,
delay uh, environmentally protective technology, namely the catalytic converter, which of course I think everyone with a car is familiar with at this point.
mhm.
And just having that be what it's about, I was like, wow, didn't expect that.
Yeah, and to kind of tie this thing in that I just wanted to go and read more about, and I think not only to have something that small, like when Damon said like catalytic converters will never be able to fit underneath the hood of a car, blah blah, and like there's no way of all this stuff, and then um to go and like read about how horrible it is, and have Matt Damon just kind of symbolize this overall sliminess of these big corporations, these CEOs, like embody that so well. and have all the like social commentary kind of interacting with all these people, especially the way that Cheadle's character Kurt kind of ends up, where Aldrich takes him out to Kansas City, and he's like, we have this much money. How much do you think is fair? And he's like, I just want my 5,000, and like that's it. And he's like, okay, enjoy KC. Like, I just thought that was like such a perfect ending for that character. Just someone who's like constantly running a gambit, constantly running a game, but like follows like these rules to it, and has like this like almost unspoken way of living. I just thought was really, really well done. And I thought Del Toro's ending was great too.
Yeah.
Julia Fox getting that last laugh on him, and then she gets just the bag stolen from her by the minions of the big government. It's all this
Mhm.
big metaphor, which I think is just really, really wonderful. So,
Oh,
really
yeah.
impressed the whole thing. What'd you think of Brendan Fraser, our guy?
Happy to see him in a film. I believe the comeback happened a few years ago when he was the lead of Trust, the Getty kidnapping FX series, and he had some Me Too stories of his own. From as a victim, but yeah, just happy to see him back, right? Because he was someone who was A+ list leading man in the
Mhm.
2000s, and that had stopped. So just to see him as anything, I think he was really good in this role, right? Where like
Yeah.
he's playing alongside Leota at that dinner table, and like Leota's like really like calm and collected, and then Frasier's Doug Jones is just like and sloppy. Like he was just like so fucking pissed at Del Toro and Don Cheadle. He was awesome.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I thought he was great there, but I really loved him in the beginning when he's
Yeah,
kind of like getting the team together, and he's
the
just
handler
like,
basically.
yeah, I just thought that was such a perfect role for him to kind of just get to walk around and be like smarmy but charming, and a little gross all at the same time. I really enjoyed him. I really liked Ray Liotta's character.
Of
Not
course.
necessarily being that character, but Leota just played it so well.
Just happy to see another Soderbergh movie. Really excited for Kimmy coming up on HBO Max with Zoe Kravitz. Is Soderbergh, man. He knows what he's doing. I was really excited to see this film and it delivered. So no sudden move. Love it. And next week we have just a few things coming up, but notable stuff. Marvel's film return at last, Black Widow, both in theaters and on Disney Plus. We have I Think You Should Leave out now on Netflix, and debut of HBO's The White Lotus, and also a new album from Vince Staples, one of the best rappers in the game. So see you next week, youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Peace.